Thank you for coming today to this special meeting. I'll now call to order. Roll call, please.
Councilman Benoit?
Here.
Councilman Cashman will not be here. Councilwoman Swanson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Walker?
Here.
Mayor Moore?
Here. We will now have the flag salute. Our special guest, Congressman Calvert, will you lead us in the flag salute?
Thank you. Please join me in the salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Any public comments, Debbie?
Next is George Taylor.
Good afternoon, Congressman, City Council, staff, and members of the audience. My name is George Taylor. I'm a resident of this small city of Wildomar, California. And my concern is that I feel that my voting rights are being violated because these folks are being forced by an attorney who does not live here, does not know who is here, does not do business here, and does not know what we do here. But he's filed what I consider an unfounded lawsuit against this city that's forced these folks to make a decision to change our way of voting from the at-large system to the by-district system. If that happens, right now, by at-large, I can vote and evaluate 5 candidates for election. If I have to go to a by-district, I'll be put into a district. I can only evaluate and vote for 1 candidate of the 5 that comes from the district that I live in. So I'm being denied the right to evaluate or vote for any of the other 4. In addition, if nobody decides to run for my district, I have no representation in the election. And therefore, these folks can make the decision of who's going to represent me, and I don't have any say about that. So I consider all of that a violation of my rights, and I think this attorney is using this under the color of race for his own personal gain. It's my opinion. I'm not an attorney, but I can read and write English, and I understand what it says. And further, he makes statements in here that are not true. He says that there's no history of any Latino being represented on our city council. And the President Moore, Mrs. Moore right there, is of Latino descent. She has been involved in what we call the Wildomar Incorporate Now committee before we ever became a city. She's well respected in this community, and she's been elected twice to a position on the council, and she's ascended to mayor twice on this council. So I consider this lawsuit a matter of extortion to cause them for personal gain, to cause me to have a violation of my civil rights. And that's why I'm up here today. I've sent you this multiple address letter expressing my concerns. I sent it to the Attorney General of the United States, the Attorney General of the State of California, to Jerry Brown, to Barbara Boxer, to Dianne Feinstein, to Melissa Melendez, to this city for public record, and everybody else in the world I could figure out who to send it to. So everybody else should be on board with what the concerns of a small city are, and they need to have protection against people that would do this so they can make a decision to make a change without the fear of a lawsuit. And we know that this guy has sent stuff to other small cities, and he's making tons of money over it by shotgunning the race card, in my opinion. So that's my comment, sir, and I hope that you appreciate it. Thank you.
I agree with you.
Thank you, George.
Yeah, I think we all can agree with George on that.
Right.
And, you know, Congressman Calvert explained real quick, there were 8 cities that we know of in Southern California that were hit with this letter December 22nd. They asked for a 3-week response. We know of 1 city that ignored them. Our city took a different route and we started down the path of going ahead and saying, okay, what's the cost to defend this? And we found out that that would be about $500,000 that we don't have. We quickly went ahead and said, okay, we have to do this. And the city that didn't do anything, that didn't respond to this gentleman, didn't say, okay, we're going to go ahead and do it, they're already in a lawsuit as of last Tuesday. So it's unfortunate this gentleman's doing that to every city he can find.
I think they may have done that to the city of Corona also, which is pretty large.
Yep, I believe they did a while ago.
One of the council members mentioned to me, and I agree, this attorney is out to make money and using what he believes, I think, is an incorrect look at the law. As you know, the federal government is very reluctant to get involved in state voting right issues. Sure. So it's all the voting rights typically within any state is operated by the Secretary of State in this state and most states. And so unless there's obviously something going on that denies the rights of individuals their day as a full voting member. And I'll certainly look into it. I don't agree with it. I think it's wrong. I've said this before. Once I've represented a number of cities. Once they get good into this balkanization of their community, then people run for their ward, and they represent that ward, sometimes to the detriment of the rest of the city, and then they create all kinds of mischief, and so it's not a good way to govern. So I certainly support you in what you're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you. So now, agenda item number 1.
Discussion of issues of general interest and concern with Congressman Calvert. Recommendations, staff recommends that the City Council discuss issues of general interest and concern with Congressman Calvert and direct staff as deemed appropriate.
Do we have any public comments on this issue, number 1?
We have no comments.
Okay. Anyone like to start? Particular issue?
I'll go ahead and start with one, and actually it's a compliment. Before we get into the questions, I know that in the past we've had these meetings, and I think 2 years in a row we raised the issue of mail being stolen from mailboxes. I know you recently carried a bill, and I believe it passed, and can you tell us about that bill for mailboxes?
Well, the bill's in process right now, and Paul Cook came on as an additional co-sponsor on the bill because he's having the same difficulty in the rural areas.
Mm-hmm.
People stealing mailboxes, not just for the mail inside, but for the metal. And so we put up a bill, I introduced the bill, to double the federal incarceration for individuals who mess around with these mailboxes. And we have to work with the post office that are having their challenges to work with citizens to protect that mail and to protect those locations. It's a real problem, not just here. It's going on all over the country, and people trying to get people's identification, use that to obviously steal money. So we want to make sure we get on top of this as much as we can. So sorry that's going on. It's going on everywhere.
It's appreciated that you're working on it.
So the state level is thinking about doing a tax per mile, and I do commute to Orange County every day. Is the federal thinking about doing something similar, or?
Not at this time. I think right now, as you know, we just passed a transportation bill. It's been signed into law. What we'd like to see happen, if we can ever, once we get past this presidential election, is do a one-time repatriation, put that into the gas fund, on top of the gas funds that we presently have. And we have about $2 trillion, $3 trillion overseas right now that's not coming or flowing back into the United States. We'd like to take a percentage of that, put it into the transportation fund. That'll get us 5 or 6 years of money, federal money, to fund our responsibilities to build infrastructure in the United States. In the meantime, I think it'd be good to have a national debate about how do we fund highways and infrastructure, especially highways in the future, because obviously electric vehicles are here to stay. I suspect within 5 years there'll be considerably more electric vehicles on the road. Right now they pay 0 into the transportation fund. Hybrids are getting better and better mileage, 40, 50, 60 miles to the gallon in some cases. So we're going to have to look at it, but there's no movement right now to put any kind of vehicle miles traveled. But I think that we'll have a discussion about how we fund highways in the future. Do we increase the gas tax, knowing that a considerable number of people will be excused from that tax if they don't buy gas? Or do we look at a direct fee system? I don't know. So let the people communicate with us and find out what their ideas are, and figure out a way to, because we have to maintain the highways in this country, and that's something we have to figure out how to do.
Did you want to maybe introduce yourself? I know some came from DC, so they're
Sure,
happy to be here.
maybe I can get my staff to introduce themselves.
Okay.
They came out from Washington. My chief of staff, David Ramey, to start out.
Dave Ramey, Mr. Calvert, since he came in Congress 24 years ago.
Wow.
Cool.
Don't ask him any questions about it.
Ian Foley, I'm new, I've only been with him for 3 years.
I'm Molly Lowe, also about 3 years with Congressman Calvert.
Why don't you tell the subject you work on too while you stand up?
I do all his interior and natural resources and transportation infrastructure work.
I do budget, tax, judiciary, public safety related issues.
Thanks, Molly.
Rocky Cheka, defense fellow, I've been with him for about 3 weeks.
Rocky's a United States Marine. So.
Defense, immigration, and international relations.
I'm Tricia Evans. I'm his Deputy Chief of Staff and Scheduler. And I've been with him 10 years.
Wow.
Jolynn Murphy, the Congressman's District Director for almost, it's going on 18 years. So yeah, it's a while here in California.
Sorry, I'm Jason Gagnon, the Congressman's Communications Director. I've been with him for 14 years.
Wow. Well, kudos to how long they stay.
They haven't dumped me yet. So.
And right now they're in sunny California, so it is.
They're happy to be here. They had a hard time. They left D.C. or were supposed to leave D.C. at 9 in the morning and get into L.A. at noon. And I think they got in around 6:30 yesterday because of the weather issues on the East Coast. So it's
I had a question. You know that Brown's trying to do the fast track or the fast train in the middle of the desert. Is there a way that Washington can block
well,
that?
we blocked all future funds, all discretionary accounts to that train. There were existing monies were already appropriated, which we can't get to until we have another president, obviously, because he would veto any bill that would disappropriate those funds. So we need to get somebody else up there. But there's an initiative that is trying to make it to the ballot. I don't know where that is as far as the signatures are concerned. But that's another way, direct participation of the state to stop that. Right now, a great majority of the people in California are opposed to that rail. If we could take the money and redirect it into water infrastructure or dams, conveyance, people would support that.
Right.
We need that, but we certainly don't need a train that nobody's going to take, and it's going to take, I think the last number I saw, $100 billion to build.
As long as he can't get any more money.
Not from the feds, he's not getting more money from us.
Well, he's already taken our gas tax money and put it in the general
Yeah,
fund.
it's taking the cap and trade money that was supposed to be used for other purposes and taking that and diverting it into the high-speed rail, which is clearly, I think, a misallocation of those funds.
Okay.
And as you probably know, we still have not received back our money, Wildomar, the 4 cities that we're still waiting on.
Yeah, obviously you deserve to get your money. I know it's a state issue. I hope you get it soon. I mean, any help be assistance, I'll do it. Here's the Eastvales. I'm going to go see them later in the week. They're not too happy, but
Yeah.
Same boat. There's no federal money that you could attach to a rider or some sort that says, sorry, you're not going to get this until those 4 cities are taken care of?
Well, that's something to consider as we move this appropriations process forward, and I wouldn't object to doing something like that. Well, I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
We'll talk more later.
We don't want to talk about extorting one government.
Is that what that's about?
But they should do the right thing and get the money.
Well, they've been extorting it from us for 4
Yeah.
years. Maybe it's time for
It's terrible.
retribution.
It's terrible that they do that.
It doesn't make sense that it passes both houses and gets on his desk twice and he vetoes it. It doesn't make any sense at all.
He's going to be a little petty.
And, you said last year, attach it to something he wants. Well, the only thing he wants is the train, and I don't know if there's any way to attach it to that, and that may not go anyhow. But there just seems like there's no way around it. When we became a city, we all wanted to be a city for some local control. And that's all I've seen since being elected when we became a city is we have no local control. That the state can step in and take whatever they want. The feds have been good. We have no problem with you guys. But the state can come in and say and do this voting act. I mean,
win or lose, we pay their attorney fees, and they're double what everybody else charges. I mean, there's just no justice in any of it. And as George said, the last election, 3 of us ran, and there was only 2 people that even came on to run against us. So these districts, we're gonna have nobody running, or somebody very unqualified.
Right. Yeah, that's another reason to have a loser pay system in America, what we have today. No, it's terrible. And if you want to take on these issues, these folks, you got to have a lot of deep pockets. And they probably not an accident. They
know what cities
you
can.
pick cities that have financial challenges, and so.
Well, and the way the law is written, even if you have the money to fight it, wasn't it Palmdale and it cost them $6 million, they still lost?
Yeah.
And then a judge set up the districts, and if you weren't in that district and the people had elected you, you didn't have a spot, they had to do it somebody else. I mean, it's written so poorly.
Well, Whittier actually was the only city to get the case dismissed, and the judge still awarded $900,000.
So you can't win.
Pretty bad judges here in California.
Yeah.
These are all state judges, obviously.
Yeah, and.
They're not federal judges.
One of the state judges up in Northern California basically told someone with a similar lawsuit that, no, you're not gonna get paid that exorbitant rate. And they haven't filed another one of these suits up in Northern California. So it's all about that exorbitant rate, the fact they can make the money.
If you get a bill passed to limit legal fees to lawyers.
Based on your area maybe, or.
Involved in these things, that would, of course, I'm sure the Bar Association and the Trial Lawyers Association would capitulate to that.
Yeah.
A lot of lawyers in Sacramento.
Oh, yeah.
And Washington, for that matter.
There's a few.
I'm not a lawyer.
Okay, so one of our items is the Community Development Block Grant, the CDBG money.
Right.
Looks like we're asking for assistance with the 2013-14 program, funding time limits, 270 days plus 6 months.
Yeah, if I may, that's a project that we started a couple of years ago, and we had gone through, got the award from Community Development Block Grant, constructed the project, but then found that the subcontractors that we utilized were ineligible. So we could not use the funds to pay for that project. We used other funds to do that. But it deferred the use of those funds a period of time. And for us to find another project in the CDBG area to write up the plans for it and to advertise, we've exceeded now the 270-day limit to use those funds, plus the 6-month extension that they gave us. So they're threatening by the rules, they can take those funds back away from us for 2013-14. It's about $88,000. And to us, you know, we contributed $2,374 last year to increase our general fund balance. So $88,000 is a lot of money to us. So if we can get some sort of an additional extension to use those monies for 2013.
Well, we'll do everything we can to get you an extension.
That would be great. That would be great.
And, yeah, and figure out a way to keep that money here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay.
And
I'm sure they're taking note of that right now. We can get one of our people to call you and see if we can get that on track.
And our CDBG area is primarily the Sedco Hills area up there, so
right.
improvements mean a lot
Sure.
to the community.
And as it turns out, that'll be my district coming up, so that means much.
Oh, I know that septic tank issue up there is still
Yes,
a prominent issue, and I would like to see some grant dollars coming out of our EPA accounts, so hopefully we'll make some progress with that too.
Yeah, we're definitely interested in that, and our water district is too, and you know, our stormwater permits are looking at that as well, so we have a combined interest to see some, you know, some effective help for that neighborhood.
It eventually will rain. I thought it was going to rain this year, hasn't it? But as you know, the septic tank failure, once you get the groundwater up, places like Sedco Hills, will reoccur. Then you get health issues.
Yeah.
Then you get mandatory letters, and then that causes, you know, expensive problems. So hopefully we can find out a proactive way to resolve this.
Yep, so since we still don't have our money back and our police chief is here, unfortunately we had to cut back on our police service. So is there any federal public safety grants maybe that we could you apply for it, because we probably will not receive our money until the governor comes on.
You know, we don't earmark anymore, and unfortunately, but if there is any grant dollars, we'll be more than happy to work with you for whether it's typically not for manpower, it's typically for one-time acquisition, communications, gear, things like that. So, but usually most cities have a need for something. It's cameras or, you know, for interchange for traffic monitoring, things like that. Sometimes we can help you with some grant money. So we'll work with the city manager on that. Some interoperability issues. But typically, we would work that with the county sheriff's department since you're a contract city. And same thing with the county fire department. But I suspect you would have a centralized communications here in the city with them. So,
Well, we have our emergency operations center, which is right behind that divider there, that we've been creating and adding to, and we have been going after some of those federal grants for that.
So, you know, the county has spent a significant amount of money putting together their communications center.
Yep. So, significant amount of federal money as well.
Well, they certainly have received federal money in the past, but they've tapped all kinds of different. I forget what that system costs, because we're trying to get all the cities that have police departments, Corona, Marietta, Riverside, everybody else to participate in that. I think they're getting more success than they've had, so that's good. And so, because the system is supposed to be able to be used by every federal agency, state agency, local agency without any hiccups. So, you know, like what happened in San Bernardino, where people can talk to each other and make sure they can communicate efficiently. We don't want that. We don't want something like that happening here. But if it did, we want to make sure that everybody can communicate.
Sure. I think one of the questions I had for you is, you know, Brown had to do the Prop, I think it's what, 47 or whatever, to reassign people down to the county jail level. Is there any way to get some of the easing on the numbers so they don't do what, I mean, they already did this. I mean, this is a nightmare. Because we're having crime that's going up like crazy. It's ridiculous.
No, every city I go to, it's one of the first things they mention, that these so-called petty crimes are skyrocketing. Burglaries, breaking into cars, drugs, all that is skyrocketing because a lot of the folks are getting back on the street. And again, that's a state law. The governor has been very clear. He'd like to close prisons, not build prisons. He's dumping this problem onto the counties, county jail system, which, you know, as a citizen, I look at and say, look, this is, I mean, as you know, all the counties have their own challenges without having to be given the state's obligations.
Well, he's blaming it on the feds, though. He's saying that they made up the rules, who can stay in the prison so long and all that kind of stuff.
Well,
or how many.
Why is this this is why one of the few states that are obviously going the direction he's going. Right. You know, when he says there's victimless crime, you know, on drugs, I question whether drugs is a victimless crime. And you know, the proliferation of use of drugs, whether it's marijuana or whether it's heroin, unfortunately, which is making a dramatic comeback, or crack cocaine, those drugs have secondary effects. People get addicted, they want money to pay for their habit, and
they can't hold a job down.
they can't hold a job, and that's a problem. I think your county law enforcement people will tell you what percentage of the criminals that they arrest are on drugs. I think most people would be shocked to know it's a very, very high percentage. So there is a correlation between illegal drug use and crime. I mean, it's just a fact.
Right.
And so if they're not incarcerated or cured, I mean, I think drug courts are a good idea. I think anything to get people off drugs and back to a productive life is a good idea. I don't oppose that at all. But also incarceration does work. People incarcerated don't commit crimes.
That's right.
So, we need, and plus the fact that many people that are arrested on a crime have done crimes we're not even aware of. Sometimes much worse than the crime that they're eventually convicted of. So this has all kinds of ramifications for our state. We have no challenges in California without an increasing, and it's what's discouraging. We've had so many years of a declining crime rate, because we've made these 3-strike laws and other laws to incarcerate people that do wrong. I think this whole broken window strategy that we've had in California, which worked in New York and other places, is unfortunately being thrown out. And it's being found out in New York too, to their detriment. As crime is coming back to New York City.
But there's just no way to put the pinch on him, huh? On Governor.
Well, as you know, in the state of California, the legislature is predominantly on the other team, and Jerry's not going to listen to me tell him what he should do. He's going to do what he's going to do.
Yeah, but when the funds flow from you guys coming to him.
That's true. We do have some abilities to constrain appropriations, but there's a lot of fungible dollars that he uses. Most of the money for law enforcement, quite frankly, on the local level, comes from state and local levels, not from the federal government. So we can do some pressure points, but certainly on federal crime.
I'm willing to take the pressure or the pain in order to cause him grief. So whatever you guys can cut back there, I don't care what it's coming from.
I have a bill working with to do that, exactly that, on sanctuary cities, for instance.
Exactly.
And that any city, say like San Francisco, that involves themselves in giving sanctuary to criminals will not be in receipt of any federal funds. So they have a choice to make. You can either follow the law or not follow the law. So if we have a criminal that we want to put in the federal system or to deport, and if the city refuses to do so, to turn that prisoner over, then they should have consequences of that.
It seems to work. When I did it to my children and it cut off their funds, they usually listened to what I had to say. So I know if you guys, I don't care where the funds are coming from, anything coming from the federal government to California should be grabbed and said, hey, you're not doing right by the people in your state, we're not going to help fund you on anything. And state rights is all state rights, that's fine, but they don't have the right to get money from the federal government every day either.
No, we don't want to punish innocent people, but sometimes you have to let people understand there are consequences to not upholding the law. San Francisco clearly, and I just don't want to point out San Francisco, there's a number of cities throughout the state that involve themselves in that, but that seems to be always funded by San Francisco.
Yeah, well, there's going to be pain one way or another.
Targets
Sometimes
sometimes.
themselves easy targets, especially
Yeah.
after the shooting up there on the pier. So.
Well, there's pain one way or another. It's either from the feds cutting some of the stuff and causing pain for us, or it's pain of all these people running around on the streets killing people and robbing everybody and getting away with it. And to watch, talking to our chief and see people that they walk in the front door and before the guy can even finish the paperwork, they're out the back door. I mean, that's despicable. And if there's federal funds that stops them or the threat of loss of, I would use everything I could if I was at that level, at your level. I would just tell them flat out, hey, I'm gonna take your money back. We're gonna work on that. Let them know up front. And I don't care what party you are, if you're doing because I don't care what party we are, we're all suffering in California. And it doesn't matter. The citizens are the ones that are paying the price, and we're just fed up with it, so. Anything, pinch them, cut it off. I'm all for it. I'll even bring in the screwdriver to turn the wrench down.
Well, like I said, I have no complaints for you or federal government so far, but I really wanted to ask your staff and yourself to keep us in mind. If there's a grant, if there's something that you think would help, we need the help. We're not a city that gets a lot of taxes. We rely on our gas taxes. While you're here, if you will buy your gas.
Fill your car up before you leave, please.
And I know, when you're in DC, we're a long ways away, but I've known Ken for a long, long time, from the real estate days. So, Wildomar, maybe we're towards the bottom of the list alphabetically, but kind of move us up and give us a hint when there might be some money that we could use for law enforcement, for pay. There's nothing we don't need. If you've got a grant for a broom, we'll use it and clean the sidewalks. But keep us in your thoughts and let us know, keep us in the loop. That's would be the most important thing that you guys could do for us right now.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's nothing more I'd like to do is bring some back, your taxpayer dollars back to you. And if we can figure out a way to get a grant money or any dollars that are coming back to California, let's try to do it. As you know, on these transportation bill, it was passed, and I know it's frustrating that some of the I-15 improvement money has been delayed because of dollars that RCTC and the state does not have. If there's additional dollars that go back into the transportation fund because of future legislation, we all need to work together to make sure that these improvements, I know this is your main arterial, is given first consideration for expansion. The interchanges along here get fixed, and because that needs to be done. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Thank you. So as Marcia was mentioning, there's nothing we don't need. So currently we're paying a $120,000 fee for the Marietta Creek and Santa Margarita Watershed MPDES permit. So that's something that actually was not figured into when we became a city. Our councilman, our CFA, that actually was not configured into that because there was just such a, was kind of blindsided by that. But also El Nino, which we know it's coming. We already had our first strike in the beginning of January. We've had out how many hundreds, over 100 tons of sand we've given out.
Over 9,700 sandbags have been given away to the community.
To prepare, everybody clean out our storm drains, get prepared, so we've already spent thousands of dollars on that. Of course, we have many still of our dirt roads are still, or many of our city roads are still dirt, so they need to get paved. So the list goes on and on. Wildomar's definitely a need.
I know flood control is a big challenge in this whole Marietta Creek. We're working on that to get that completed. As you know, phase 2 is under construction. We're looking to get hopefully get another $200,000 in planning money to change the federal allocation as far as the cost-benefit ratio on Marietta Creek, where we can get phase 3 and get funded by the federal government. And to get that done, there's an absolute federal nexus there. Get that project completed. Dusty over at the county is retiring this year after 38 years. I can't believe it. I think Dusty's younger than me. So, but he's done a great job, and I know that there's I need to sit down with him before he leaves. There's a lot of historical memory there about what are our priorities on flood control, and I know you all have some real challenges here in the community, some old flood control issues that need to be fixed. And some of these old city trails, because I used to walk all over them when I was a kid. I used to go hunting out here, and there was nobody out here when I was a kid. Go quail hunting. I don't think there's much quail left here.
Still up in Oak Circle, I used to see them up there.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to be all over the place. But we're happy to work with you.
So, thank you. Anyone else?
Gary, anything else? Did you want to?
I was just going to mention about the streetlight program that TUMF is coordinating out here in the region. And ultimately, all the cities out here hopefully will participate in taking possession of the streetlights in their communities. And once they do that, then we're looking at converting all those streetlights to the energy efficient streetlights.
LEDs?
Yes. And if there's federal programs that would help us achieve energy reduction.
See if there is. Not sure. But
because it's about a $60 million
acquisition number?
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
That's for all of them.
And that's for us in Marietta, Temecula, a lot of them cities down here in this region.
Yeah, and by the way, those new conversions, not only are they cheaper to operate, but you put out a heck of a lot more light.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? I mean, it's just that these new LEDs are very efficient and put out a lot of light.
We have a lot of people in town that are worried it's too much light, actually. They want to keep the dark skies, so we have to balance that out, but yeah.
But I can't solve that.
We'll put
even the slightly less bright ones, that are even more efficient.
You have those blinders.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's actually been one of the problems we've had with Edison going back years. In fact, when I first ran for council 6 years ago, walking neighborhoods and people asking me, hey, can I just get a blinder put on the light? So when I first got elected, I went and asked Edison, they wanted $1,000 per blinder.
Really?
Yeah.
You could probably get the private guys to come.
Well, once it's our poles, we will have the private guy, and it'll be a contract, it'll be part of the whole nexus of doing that. We'll be able to, hey, we need blinders here and here, let us get taken care of. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, be great.
One other one not actually on here is medical marijuana, because that's really coming down the pipeline for us.
I see a lot of sick teenagers running around nowadays. So, I mean, I've been a real critic of this whole explosion of medical marijuana, so-called medical marijuana. People that are truly sick, I don't think anybody wants to deny people that are truly sick, whatever medication. You know, we give morphine to people that are, extremely ill. But unfortunately, as you know, a lot of this medical marijuana is being used as a subterfuge to get marijuana. And it's getting out to the younger population, and that's not a good thing. I'm sure your county chief would agree with me. And they see an explosion of that, because I talk to them all the time, and it's not good. And now there's going to be an initiative on the ballot to legalize it. I can't tell you, I mean, obviously I'm going to oppose it, do everything I can to defeat it.
Is there a reason that the federal government doesn't make it a prescription?
Well,
like in
under
a
federal
pharmacy?
law, this is illegal.
I
But
understand.
unfortunately, this administration refuses to enforce federal law in the states.
But is what I'm saying is if the federal government went ahead and put it on a prescription drug instead of making it illegal, I mean, there's a lot of drugs that are a lot harder than
There
that.
may be,
And then they can go to a pharmacy.
there may be a realistic way to deal with it for people who truly are sick to get medical
Right, and
marijuana,
it
rather
takes
than,
out the middlemen and the riffraff.
and that may be where we need to go now,
Yeah.
because of, quite frankly, because of we've had those discussions. Because you can legally get certain, OxyContin, you can get morphine, you can get a lot of drugs, but we may have to change the classification work to deal with marijuana that way. To allow people who are truly sick.
Right, it would
I don't want to deny
make it easier
people.
on everyone.
Yeah, but kids are getting it, that's the problem. They go to these marijuana,
Oh, they'll give it to anybody.
yeah,
You pay the doctor whatever it is, $100, $200, and he'll give you a card.
yeah, these guys are operating with cash. Gosh only knows what's going on. They're building
They don't dare put it in the
warehouses
bank,
out
the
in
feds would know then.
What's that?
They don't dare put it in the bank, the feds
However,
would know.
I would say this, the folks that are putting money up to build these big warehouses out in Desert Hot Springs to grow all this stuff and all, it is against federal law. Federal law has not changed. And people that are involved in this, if we get a president that will uphold federal law, and you got RICO statutes, I mean, they're going to be a case to Jesus here coming up pretty soon. So.
That's awesome.
So I hope that we, because I know that my friend Chris Christie made that point in a couple of debates. If that you guys,
This is the craziest election I've ever seen. That's all I can say.
I'll attest to that. But hopefully, well, one thing is we all know, we'll all know. It's all going to be over with next November.
Yep.
Yep.
One way or the other.
Sooner than later.
Pretty scary though.
Anything else? Gary, anything else?
No, that's, all the items I had on my list. Yes.
Well, we'll work with you.
That's great. Appreciate that.
Thank you for coming here to our city.
Thank you. I love coming out here. This is, that's part of my job.
I think the staff does too, so.
They love getting off the East Coast.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, may I ask the Congressman one more federal question?
Okay. Go to the microphone.
Again, my name is George Taylor, resident of Wildomar. Sir, with respect to earmarks, I've watched all of that good stuff, okay? You're you are our and my elected representative for this district. You obviously, I have to believe, receive a lot of letters from all over this district with respect to our concerns. So why should you not be able to ask federal funds to support the needs of this district? Or is that considered an earmark, or is an earmark a bridge to nowhere?
That's a good question. I get a little history here, but by the way, even at when earmarks were out there, it represented about 1/2% of federal outlays. That was it. And then there was a significant process in which we had to go through to make sure that it was transparent. You asked for, say, X amount of money to do streetlights. And so I put a line in the federal government for streetlights. Today that would be considered an earmark. And so that only the president can earmark within a federal budget. He submits his budget through the OMB, and once there's a line, what we call a line in the federal budget, then we can plus up that account, minus that account, but the president makes those decisions, which is the first time that I know that Congress is basically removed from the process of being able to determine where those funds are to be used. So we needed to fix the system. There were, as you mentioned, bridge to nowhere or other problems, but we could have fixed that rather than throw the baby out with the bathwater. And now we've got a situation where if you're a constitutionalist and believe in the Constitution, even my old friend Ron Paul would say that's crazy to get rid of the system of congressional authorization and appropriations, because that's what the founding fathers wanted. They didn't want the imperial presidency making those decisions. They wanted government closest to the people.
Well, how else is Congress supposed to know my needs if that's why you're there?
Well, that's why we need to reform the system and bring back some part of congressional appropriations, which I favor of reforming it and bringing it back for cities like yours, that we have these issues. Sometimes it's not a lot of money, but it's federal dollars. It has an absolute federal nexus to it. In other words, when I say a federal nexus, we can't fund things that are that have nothing to do with the federal government. We have to have something that has your flood control projects here on a federal blue line stream, or Interstate 15, or interchange on this freeway, or any number of federal projects that I work with every day. So there's an absolute federal need for that, a federal responsibility for that. It's my job to go out, and that has been for a number of years, to go out and find those dollars and help these communities.
Is that why you're asking for grants in lieu of?
That's correct, because then we have to, if the grants are apparently blind, right, because they're not influenced by a member of Congress, because there's an existing grant system, say through EPA or some other agency, that makes determinations which are non-prejudicial. Yeah, it's really crazy. Because I know this district better than an agency within the federal government. And so I know where the money should go, and would work with the communities to make sure that occurred, and what the priorities are. So, we didn't do ourselves as a country any favor. But it's my job to go out and educate people about that, because I think people misconstrued what earmarks were and what they can be. There were obvious problems within the system, very small number of them, but nonetheless, we have to we can't have those kind of mistakes, and make sure that people are treated fairly, and a transparent system that are things that people can support.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for coming to talk to us, and we appreciate that.
Sure, thank you.
Have
a great day.
Is there any movement already in Washington to push?
Oh yeah, especially from the appropriators, obviously. I'm the appropriator. Obviously, there's some political resistance. I think after this election's over, I think that we'd sit down and try to figure out, both parties have to sit down and work this out. But, when you have absolute federal needs in these districts, and you're unable to do something, that's that's crazy. It's whether it's you're meeting your federal housing requirements, whether it's, you know, just, I mean, on and on and on. So it never ends. And even if it's not any money involved, just changing some language in the bill, some people would deem that as an earmark. So, I mean, it's gone way beyond, you know, we need to sit down and get this worked out. I think a lot of people coming to me lately, it's interesting this brought up today, because people are coming up to me lately and say, why, that wasn't an earmark. I said, yeah, it was. No, that's not an earmark. Yeah, it is. On the way that we define earmarks, if I put money into Wildomar, because I represent Wildomar, no matter what the federal requirement may be, it's considered an earmark. Most people don't think of it that way.
So we should get one of the other guys in the state to do it for us?
I wouldn't trust.
It's not an earmark, right?
Yeah, you use these pass-through dollars, you know, because the state doesn't take any of that, right?
Well, I have Jeff Stone's number if he gets elected, so. We'll be calling him quick.
Yeah, no, Jeff's gonna, be fine. I can't talk about politics here.
Well, thank you for coming to our wonderfully small city of Wildomar.
Thank you, I enjoyed it. Okay, well, have a great day. I hear we're gonna have rain tomorrow, so we need it.
Will they take a picture with you if
Yeah,
possible?
that's what I've been told, so that's,
Maybe take a picture with you out here.
sure, absolutely.